Dr. Carlos Rivas, what's happening?
Hey, good afternoon, Tony.
Welcome to Hangry and Horny, brother.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure. It's always good to hang out with you.
Yeah, definitely, man. So you just got back from Hawaii. You moved there recently, huh?
Yeah, so we moved it's cute. We flew out on Valentine's Day, February 14th this year. So we've been out there like 5 months now. But before I left, we made a strong commitment that, our roots, our family are all here in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yep.
So we make sure to come back. And then also professionally, kind of the hub of what I'm doing is here in the Bay Area, especially around one of your former podcast guests, Dr. Scott Scher.
Yes.
Since he's kind of one of our chief organizers, I imagine we'll get into more details.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had Dr. Scott Scher on a couple episodes ago.
But he's kind of our anchor, so when we do things physically as a group, it's usually here.
For the home group, right?
Yeah, for health optimization, medicine, and practice.
Okay. Yeah. So you're a medical doctor. You went to Georgetown University, right?
Yeah, for my MD, I went to Georgetown University. For my bachelor's in engineering, I went to UC Berkeley here. Go Bears.
Yeah, so you were an engineer before becoming a medical doctor.
I guess I have an engineering degree. I never really practiced engineering. I never certified to practice in engineering. We can get into that a little bit. But yeah, definitely I have a kind of engineer's outlook on, what I would call problems in the world and troubleshooting them. But yeah, I have an engineering degree, and then I got my medical degree at Georgetown, and then I did my residency here in internal medicine in the Bay Area at Highland Hospital, which is the county hospital of Oakland and of Alameda County.
So how did you go from engineering to medicine?
So actually what happened was my dad's an engineer, mostly electrical engineering, doing circuits and circuit boards in telecommunications. So almost all of his work has always been here in the Bay Area with some of the big tech and communications companies. So I grew up here in the Bay Area in kind of a tech environment, and specifically with my father's influence with an engineering mindset. I always had an interest and a little bit of an aptitude for math and the hard sciences. AP physics was one of my favorite classes in high school. But AP bio is where I really just kind of naturally felt I almost felt like I was playing and having fun in AP bio class, which was weird. So I knew that I liked biology, but also knew that maybe kind of following my father's footsteps and the model that he put out there to do things in kind of a technical way. And at the same time when I was applying to college was when stem cell science was really hitting the mainstream news. I remember seeing a Time magazine cover about stem cells. That just looks cool. That looks sexy,
Right. Like the high resolution close-up photo of a stem cell.
Yeah, that kind of photo, and just stem cells. We're going to be able to do all these cool regenerative medicine things that we couldn't do before, but we need people with an engineering mindset to help us figure out the science of applying these things in real people's lives, and that just sounded so cool. So I was I want to be a bioengineer, and so I started looking at programs for that, and then was lucky enough to get into UC Berkeley's bioengineering program. And then I realized very quickly that engineering was cool, and I had kind of an engineering mindset, but didn't have the personality type to be sitting in an office or in a lab or in a machine shop working with machines or computer screens. Very quickly I got disinterested in the what an engineering professional ends up looking like from a day to day, and that was reflected in my grades. I barely graduated GPA-wise from UC Berkeley because I was in the wrong program. Bioengineering and engineering in general was sexy, but really not my personality style. I also was lucky enough to have some friends who were pre-med at UC Berkeley, and they already knew that was the track that they were on. They were close friends of mine, roommates of mine. I was he looks like he's having fun, going and volunteering at the clinic. I had some family members go through some really difficult medical things, right at the end of high school and going into college. Like both my grandfathers died of different types of cancer, both around the same time as I was like figuring out what I wanted to do academically and professionally. So that was always an inspiration where like, maybe I could do more here in the health space. But I didn't have any close family members or friends before college that were in medicine or could give me any guidance or inspiration on that track. But luckily I had some pre-med classmates, and I followed them to the clinics where they were volunteering. And after the first time volunteering in a clinic, I was like, this is it. Like, medicine. Like, I love this stuff. I can apply, like, my technical mind, but also, like, do it in a very personal, flesh and blood, one-on-one way. So that was really inspiring and motivating for me. Unfortunately, at the time, I'd already like tanked my GPA.
Yeah.
So, and like getting into American medical schools, like especially MD programs, at the time I didn't really have any access to the DO world, Doctor of Osteopathic. If I had, I might have gone that path.
Okay.
But at the time, the only thing I knew about like for legit medicine was like a traditional MD track. So that's the track I tried to get on, but it was like super competitive.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was able to get into what's called a post-bac program that they kind of help you recover your academic portfolio so that you can competitively apply to medical school. So I got into a post-bac program at Georgetown, which is where I met one of my closest friends and colleagues, Dr. Shaker Pai. He was also in a post-bac program at Georgetown.
Shaker, what's up?
What's up, bro? He was also in a post-bac program there. Him and I really clicked, just like similar outlooks.
So they have an option for students that neither went to pre-medicine route or that had like maybe poor GPAs.
Yeah, it might
that
be
still was interested in getting into medicine. There's a way that people could do that.
Definitely.
I had no idea. I would have gone that route myself.
Yeah, there's lots of different routes. Like some people will go DO, or like they're in an environment where they're more exposed to non-traditional forms of medicine, like naturopathic, chiropractic, traditional Chinese medicine, etc. I wasn't exposed to any of those things, so I was like, that's all voodoo. I want to do real medicine. My mindset's completely different now about that kind of stuff. But at the time, I was like, that's not medicine. All I know about is like the conventional medical clinic where I did some volunteering, and it was awesome. It's real science and like really taking care of people. So that was the track I went down. I was lucky enough to find out about post-bac programs. That's one way to go. There's other ways too. Like we had lots of friends that either did DO or went to some of the international schools that a lot of them are in the Caribbean. And so like some people go there and then come back and do their residency here in the United States. And I try to kind of give back to the pipeline of healers in medicine. So I have mentees that have taken all these different paths, and what matters is that you follow your heart and you keep going even if you think there's like barriers in your way, because you will, there's always a way to do what you love, even if it seems difficult or competitive,
right?
Or whatever.
Because earlier on we were talking about like how you and Shaker were able to get through medical school with the type of hours and sort of the depressions that you guys were suffering. So,
and not just us, I actually like people hearing this probably are like at least a little bit tapped into social media. So anyone hearing this, I'd recommend they look up a doc named Pamela Wibble. Have you heard of her?
No.
So she's a huge advocate for mental health awareness in physicians specifically, because unfortunately, very sadly, there's a very high rate of suicide in the healing professions, physicians, and then even some physician specialties in particular, like very sadly, anesthesiologists have a very high rate of suicide compared to the general population.
Any reason for that? Like why?
There's lots of reasons, and we can get into that through like me talking about like my story going through professional training, and me talking about like what I went through with friends and colleagues like Shaker. But yeah, so like Pamela Wibble, she does a great job of advocating for more awareness for physician mental health, physician suicide awareness. And then she also, it's not just the dark side, she also brings out the light side, which is physicians really need to find a way to practice in a way that's true to their heart and like the heart of their patients or clients.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it's that really a lot of the depression and unfortunately suicide like results is from a frustrated sense of purpose. You know, like, you know, I don't know about everybody. I can only speak definitively for myself, but I'm pretty sure that nearly all doctors go into medicine for the right reason. They want to help people. They want to be a conduit for healing. But our medical system puts a lot of impediment to that. And then doctors feel stuck and they feel like they can't give back to the world in the way that they dreamed, in the way that they hoped, and even in the way that they know in their heart they could, but just like haven't found the pathway to do it. And so they see themselves suffering professionally. They see their patients suffering in ways that would be preventable if the system was more permissive. And they don't have the support and the mentorship to find a way to do it in a way that's true to their own heart and calling. And so like sometimes that ends up on a very dark train of thought, which can have fatal consequences.
Right. So there's things like, oh, go ahead.
Dr. Pamela Wibble also like really promotes what she labels the ideal medical practice, and really helps mentor and create community around like, no, you're a physician, you need to practice true to your heart. Let's find ways to do that. So she puts a lot of light on physician mental health issues, but also like, hey, a big part of the solution is like, let's help you find a way to practice in alignment with what you know to be true in medicine.
Right. Right.
And so that's great. She's like showing what's wrong, but also giving a very powerful solution. So I really, anybody's interested in those sorts of things, like the struggles that doctors and not just doctors, it's like actually really common in a lot of the healing professions, like nursing and other healing professions. Just like the tradition is that the training's kind of inhuman, which is a little bit paradoxical and perverse, right? That like the healers are being trained in this very unhealthy environment. But it's important to have awareness of what those people are going through, because we're human too. And if we're sick, we're not going to give the kind of care that our patients and the general population deserves. And there's better ways to do it. The system isn't as built out for people who want to practice independently as it is for people who are practicing as part of big groups like HMOs or other big insurance groups. But there are ways.
Yeah, there are ways.
And Pamela is really doing a lot to shine light on that. Not the only one, thankfully.
Yeah.
There's a community of us who are really trying to find our own way. But Pamela's done a great job.
So what's some of the barriers or impediments that you guys were having that would cause you to kind of feel a little jaded about the system? I mean, this is not just in medicine, but a lot of people are doing jobs out there that aren't really true to their nature, their heart. They're just trying to like survive, trying to earn an income, put food on the table for their families, a roof over their heads. So what were those things that were in the way for you as a human being becoming a doctor?
Well, I mean, kind of like I said, I think me specifically and most doctors go into medicine for the right reasons. Want to heal, right? Want to help be a conduit to healing. For ourselves, honestly, like, you know, most of us go into medicine because we feel like there's something wrong with us and we need to find ways to promote healing with ourselves, but also then be educators and promoters and facilitators of health with the people we're interacting with. Namely, our professional obligation is to our patients.
And that's part of the Hippocratic Oath, right?
Yeah,
Heal thyself, physician, right?
Exactly. So I think all of us carry some version of the Hippocratic Oath in our hearts. But I took that very seriously. You know, like we swear the oath at our what's called the white coat ceremony. And I think one of the things that drew me and Shaker together was that we both took like the ethical and like heartfelt side of medicine very seriously. And we were both willing to discuss the problems when we'd face barriers in that. So like, what are the kinds of barriers? So like, you know, for example, just kind of starting from the beginning, like post-bac year and the first couple years of medical school, at least at the program where we were at Georgetown, it's very academic, right? Like you're in the library, freaking just like pounding your head on textbooks and syllabuses and lectures and lecture slides and whatnot, right? Just the volume of material that you're expected to process in the amount of time that you have is inhumane. It's impossible to do so without losing something fundamental in your life, right? Like you either have to give up sleep. If you're not willing to give up sleep, you have to give up your social life. And these are like important social connections too, right? I'm not just saying like, oh, you have to give up partying. It's like, no, you have to give up your wife. You have to give up your child. You have to like give up your parents, you know, because you don't have time for them. And then on top of that is like in the American, like in kind of Western medical tradition, that's actually very explicit. Like if you look at the people who are like strong influencers of the way that medicine is taught today, there was like a very influential report called the Flexner report. And it was like this researcher named Flexner traveled the Western world to find all the best practices in medical education, and one of the strongest institutions that he found at the time was Johns Hopkins. But Johns Hopkins was run by a couple like really awesome doctors that were like documented to be on cocaine and heroin to like manage their work schedule. You know, like they used cocaine to work crazy hours, and used opiates to come back down off of that. And they would explicitly say in their writings, like, your family should be proud that they're giving you up for the greater service of humanity through medicine. And that can be true in a way, right? Like if you go into any of these vocations, like you make a sacrifice. You say, like, I'm going to sacrifice a part of myself for the greater good. But everyone needs to be able to uniquely find that balance of how much they're willing to sacrifice for that greater good. And it goes way too far for the average person. And it isn't what we call, like, titrated. Like, you just, like, dive in head first. You know, like, day one, you're underwater. And you're just, like, struggling to get a breath the whole time, and it's relentless, man. Like when I have mentees and they're at this stage, like first year of medical school, I tell them, like, okay, you're kind of gonna feel like you're holding your breath for like 9 to 10 months, you know, from white coat ceremony until the end of M1 year, the end of first year of medical school, and then you're gonna have the last summer of your life, because like after that, it doesn't stop. You know, it's just like books, patients, hospital, 24/7. Like, you don't get out. And then when you try, your superiors, you know, can call upon this Western medical tradition of saying, like, you're supposed to suffer. You're supposed to give up a big piece of yourself to do this. And so it's almost like well-intentioned hazing.
Oh.
You know? So you're kind of like hazed into becoming a physician.
Wow.
And so it's like survival of the fittest kind of a process. And a lot of people in the culture kind of takes pride in that. And, you know, there's even certain terms that come out, like being one of the ones who's like kind of able to float to the top of that is called being a gunner. So there's a lot of pride in being like a gunner. Or when you're on rounds with your attending physician and they kind of lean into you for not knowing what you're supposed to know, they call that pimping, you know? So it's like, oh, it is a very kind of like, I don't know, sometimes abusive relationship between the trainee and the training institutions and the training culture.
A little tiny bullying type of
not tiny. It's really like a big culture and a big institution, and a lot of people take pride on it.
A lot of pride,
and it has helped, like the caliber of scientific rigor in medicine is extremely high. Like Western medicine has performed miracles that would be seen like completely impossible to people even like 50 years ago. And some of that comes from the intensity that's like fostered in medical training.
So there's that upside to it because they're trying to save lives, right?
Yeah, and it's real, and it's life and death, and you need to be there. And like, yeah, you're not going to sleep tonight, but you might save somebody's life if you don't sleep tonight. So get in there, So maybe I've never served in the military. None of my immediate family has served in the military, but I do have some friends who are in the military or are veterans. And so when I hear their stories or like read about like their culture, it seems similar too. It's like, nope, you're a soldier in this war against disease, and like you're going to be in the front lines and you're going to take shots and you're not going to come out of this the same, and you should kind of take pride in those scars. And so there is like some good that comes from that, but there's a lot of collateral damage to not just the doctors but also the patients when doctors like aren't like at the top of their game because they're tired or like burnt out,
and they make mistakes because they're tired
because they haven't seen their family, or and they make mistakes, or they just like aren't as like emotionally energetically available as they could be, because they've had to squash their own humanity to a degree that they probably didn't even realize. Like most soldiers going into it, they're like, yeah, I'm a soldier, I'm going to war, I'm going to get shot at. Not to say that like that's a perfect immunization against like the trauma that they might experience, but like they have some general awareness of the like intensity and riskiness of the environment that they're going into. I don't think doctors do, because we don't talk about the dark side of like how intense it is and how like dehumanizing it can be.
And you don't really know until you're on the back end, including soldiers. Like they talk about all this stuff maybe, but when you actually go through it and come back the other end, no one really understands you and what you're feeling. And so I think I'm starting to understand why some doctors are like checked out, and you feel like that they're just there to write you a prescription and go see the next patient, partly because of the system, but also partly because of having to like check out emotionally to work day in, day out, and not get sleep and not be able to take care of themselves, not see their family, not have a social life. Like all of that has its toll. And so when you're interacting with that particular physician, you may feel like they're not really there in front of you, even though they physically are.
Yeah, that's I mean, we're jumping around a little bit on the timeline, but that's what happened to me recently, right before I moved to Hawaii. My wife was pregnant, was just about to have a baby, and so like there was some financial pressure. I had to like make sure I was taking care of the three of us, because we had discussed, and I wanted to make sure that she had the flexibility to stay home with the baby if that's what she wanted to do. And she was very motivated to be a full-time mom that way, and I really wanted to support that. So I was like, all right, I gotta like figure out the financials on this. I can't just like be playing my own game, and like sleeping on couches if that's what I'm willing to do. It's like, no, I mean, I gotta take care of my family. And I hadn't figured out the way to make my ideas for private practice financially adequate yet at that point. So I had to fall back on my license and my conventional training in internal medicine. So I went into internal medicine primary care at a hospital local to here. And there were some great things about it. I speak Spanish. I'm bilingual. My parents immigrated from El Salvador, so I am a natural speaker of Spanish just from learning it at home and then practicing it over and over again with anytime I have a patient who's primarily Spanish speaking. So my Spanish isn't perfect, but it's pretty good. And I always knew I wanted to give back to my people. Like I know I'm not an immigrant, but I'm a first generation American. So I saw through my family that immigrants' life is a struggle to assimilate, to adapt, and to establish themselves so that they can give a strong foundation to the next generation. And so I've always had a lot of sympathy for that, and like obviously like I know my people's culture to the degree that I know it, so I wanted to be able to give service in that way, because I know that when you're interacting with the healthcare system, it's freaking complicated, and so if you don't speak English, and American isn't your primary culture, it can be really hard to get what you need. So I've always wanted to be in that space where I could like help out from not only a medical way, but also linguistically and culturally. That was a big thing that drew me back to Highland Hospital in Alameda County, was like, I want to take care of my neighbors. You know, I grew up in Alameda County, Union City, Fremont, Hayward, went to Moreau Catholic High School on Mission Boulevard in Hayward. I was like, I want to give back to my peeps. So I went to Highland, and then the most recent hospital I was working at, I worked in what's called the Spanish module, where all the medical assistant staff spoke Spanish and all the physician staff were bilingual in Spanish. And so we were trying to give like linguistically and culturally appropriate care. And so I loved it. Every like middle-aged Latina that came in reminded me of my mom or my grandma, and I was like, I'm taking care of my grandma right here, you know, like very heartfelt. But at the same time, the system was crazy. Like, you had 15 minutes per patient, and that's like from end to end. Like, that's not just like you have 15 minutes in the room with them. It's like, no, you have 15 minutes to review their chart before you go in, see them, like document the encounter, write the orders, like double check that you're not screwing anything up, and give them education on like how to follow up on your recommendations. All of that in 15 minutes for people who have like a whole life story to tell me, and like who knows how much complexity in their medical care and how many specialists they're seeing, etc. It was inhuman. So like the way that I managed it was by just running late 24/7. You know, I was just like, I can't like just abandon this person in front of me. So I was always running late. So I was always in trouble with the management at work. And also like all those like bureaucratic things that I mentioned, like writing the note, like putting in some of the orders, like triple checking everything. I just had to leave it for later. So then I would stay at work an extra like 4 or 5 hours a night every night. And so like I was giving up my family, even though like my newborn son and my like postpartum wife were at home, like needing me there too, you know. And so this was this constant struggle. A lot of doctors would manage it by like taking their work home. You'd take a work laptop home and do your extra stuff from home, but I could never do that because when my wife or my son were in the room with me, I couldn't not be with them, you know. So I just had to stay at work late all the time. So I lost sleep and or I lost time with my own family, and I just wasn't able to appreciate life. And then there's all these other things, like I couldn't practice medicine the way that I wanted to practice. I knew that nutrition and lifestyle were like the cornerstones of health, but you don't have the time to implement those things. You really just have time to like check some basics and write prescriptions. And so like even though a lot of doctors know better, they don't feel like they can implement more natural lifestyle based
they're
ways.
forced to by the system and the structure.
Yeah, so I was just like so stuck in that, and like I couldn't find a way out, and felt like I had gotten kind of trapped there just because like I needed the paycheck. But luckily my family was really supportive. So at one point we had saved up a little bit of money, and was just like, we gotta like blow up this situation before it blows us up. You know, like I just could feel that I was on like a
you could see
spiral.
the path, the end path.
And actually, I was like talking to some of my colleagues there who had worked there for a long time, and they were like, yeah, if I was a new doc, I wouldn't like come here. It's like, like that's not a good sign. So like I quit my job. We quit the Bay Area. We talked about this a little bit before, but I just felt like the culture in the Bay Area wasn't as personal and warm as it had been when I was growing up. You know, like thank God for Silicon Valley and the tech revolution that we've had. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now if it weren't for that, and like communicating with so many people. I'm not saying at all that I'm anti tech or anti Silicon Valley. The opposite. And like we need these technologies and we need to learn how to use them to the best degree possible. But the culture around all the tech that's coming out we haven't created an etiquette yet for how to interact with technology in a like fully pro-human way.
Right.
So like,
which means like if we're talking right now and I just happen to look down my phone for a little bit while you're still talking, it's very rude.
Yeah, it could be perceived that way. And I think even, I think we're kind of like have some instincts on like what social interaction feels like, but our devices are so powerful and in some ways like so addictive that like it's really caused I don't know, growing pains in how we're going to continue to socialize in a pro-human way that's also augmented by technology. I think we still have a lot to sort out about how to make these technologies just supportive in our communication rather than interrupting some very important aspects of communication. So right now, because of that, the culture is like very much like device driven here in the Bay Area. At least that's been my experience, especially here in Silicon Valley. So I knew that wasn't
a lot of screen time versus face-to-face time in person. That's why this show is so important, because I don't do Zoom calls or Skype calls for interviews. Right? I mean, this is why we connect, is because we see each other face to face, and even the uncomfortable parts of miscommunication, but it gives us a chance.
My leg is getting numb right now.
Yeah, your leg, whatever. You're like, moving around, and I might interpret it a certain way, but we could like laugh about these things, or I could find out like what exactly is going on. So there's more feedback that's going on, which is limited to technology, which enabled us to meet. I mean, you were into the Wim Hof Iceman method. I was doing it at the time. We had mutual friends that thought we should meet. And I was like, holy shit, some doctors that are into this. Like, you never think that doctors would be, outside the box that way. And you guys were looking for modalities that could help people, whether it's in your traditional training or outside. And so I was like, hell yeah, I want to meet these guys. And when I meet you, not only are you guys awesome, you're like, you're doctors, you actually like give a shit. We could have a conversation. I never felt like that you were better than me, in a certain way because you're a medical doctor. It was just like, yeah, that's your training, but on a human to human level, we could connect. And that's what's, I could see where you're saying with the Bay Area, so many people are so locked into their phones that they really atrophied their communication and social aspects of their life.
Yeah, and like, it's not like the Bay Area or Silicon Valley is like all bad or like something like that. It's not. I was, going back to like what I was going through professionally, I was very frustrated. So I was already kind of like in a dark mindset, and we were talking about this in the car also, but I probably have some biology that just like predisposes me to being more sensitive to mood dysregulation, if you want to call it that. So, we could get into like genetics and epigenetics and all that stuff, but let's just say like I'm probably more sensitive to like mood swings than the average person. And so like I need to be really careful about my sleep. I really need to be careful about the track that my mindset is on, because things can get really dark really quickly for me. And then when that happens, I can only see the negative. Right.
And the food you eat and
all these things.
Lifestyle.
I probably need to be more careful about it than the average person. And I see that actually when I do my own labs and do my own like quantification of my biology. It's like, whoa, my stuff gets really out of whack really easily. I need to be really careful about my micronutrients, etc. But so anyways, what I'm saying is like it was very easy for me at the time to only see the dark sides of what was happening in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley in particular, because I lived in San Mateo, worked where we are now in Redwood City, and then like my wife's family is in Santa Clara, so it was like I was like a Silicon Valley kid for the like couple years, and so I could only see the dark side. Now that I can come back here on vacation, like I can see all the beauty. You know, I can just enjoy my family, super quality time, loving the great weather. You know, we just were at a park in San Mateo, Coyote Point. You know, saw the bay and walking the hills and like in the eucalyptus grove. Even like watching the planes go by on the way to SFO, it's beautiful. And there's like a lot of beauty and even in Silicon Valley, like in the corporate tech world, a lot of creativity and ingenuity and like hardworking. Like
Yeah, innovations.
These guys like are building the tools that are gonna save the world. You know, like I can't stop praising guys like Elon Musk, who's based like basically in my hometown, Fremont, which is just on the other side of the bay from here. So I'm not saying that like it's bad to be here or whatever, but like in the mindset that I was, I could only see the negative, and I needed to like kind of blow things up and flip things over. So I knew I loved the ocean. I knew I loved warm weather. I knew I loved warm people, you know, like in a warm culture. I knew I loved the mountains and hiking. And I had been to Hawaii a couple times. Once when I was a kid with my parents, and one time more recently with my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now. And just like every time I was there, I was like, "This is it." You know, like even like local Hawaiians like will say like paradise in air quotes, but like it was definitely like the closest experience to like, you know, I'm a Christian Catholic by religious upbringing, the closest to Eden I had ever been, and still America, so you don't even need a passport to get there. You just need your driver's license and a plane ticket. So it was like, fuck it, like it was awesome every time we went. Let's just live there. My wife, she's half Japanese. There's a very strong Japanese influence in Honolulu in particular. So I think that part's cool. And so she's mixed. You could call her Hapa. And so our son is also mixed, part Japanese, part Western European, which is a lot of my heritage, you know, part Native Central American, because I have a little bit of Mayan blood in me. We could even get into the 23andMe on that if you wanted to.
Yep.
So yeah, there was like a lot of reasons on both sides where like it felt right, and then definitely it felt like a better place to raise a child. It was like we want him to be connected to nature. We want him to be warm and compassionate and loving and affectionate. I want him to surf. Like there's a surfing tradition in my family, so I'm learning how to surf again.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
your family, you're surfers.
Oh yeah, no, my dad
in
was
El
like
Salvador.
my dad was an award-winning surfer.
Wow.
In El Salvador, he would like compete in like the national surfing competitions there. So I always grew up around like. Actually, in the Bay Area, there's a lot of decent surfing, you know, like Mavericks and like lots of other beaches here in the Bay Area are like, you know, global hotspots actually for surfing. But maybe it was from our like tropical background. You know, my dad growing up in El Salvador, it's like, the water's cold here.
Yeah.
So it's actually like really hard to convince us like growing up to get in the water here. Now my dad's like, okay, well, fuck it, I'm not leaving the Bay Area because he's in tech, so he's not leaving Silicon Valley most likely. So he had to like suck it up and get a wetsuit on and like bear the cold in Santa Cruz and Half Moon Bay and Pacifica and the San Francisco shoreline. But I never like could even with my Wim Hof training, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't get in the frickin' bay, or like we would go up to Aquatic Park in San Francisco. I actually went there like with an informal little Wim Hof meetup group. You could probably even find evidence of that still on Facebook. I started like one of the Inner Fire groups on Facebook in the San Francisco area, and I tried to organize an event over there. And I was the lamest one, man. Like I could not get myself underwater there. It was like so cold. Just something like just in my psyche that was like, no, the ocean's supposed to be warm. I think I just experienced like Salvadoran waters and Hawaiian waters enough time that I was like, no, that's what feels right. Like I don't want to get in this cold ass ocean. I can get in an ice bath, but for some reason just like mentally it was a big struggle to get into that. So anyways, long story short, that like I like felt called to get back into the ocean. I know there's a lot of problems with it, but like I really like the movie Moana as just like, you know, like the vibe just felt right. Like Moana is even like a Hawaiian, like Polynesian term for the ocean. She's like an embodiment, like an avatar of the ocean. You see that in the movie, that she has this like really special relationship. It's one of my son Charlie's like favorite movies.
Oh, that's cute.
And I felt called, the same way that she kind of felt called to like go out.
Yeah.
Into the ocean. Maybe it's like the conquistador in me, like the Spanish like sailor pirate in the Pacific.
Right, explorer.
In me that would like felt called to go back out there. And unfortunately, El Salvador isn't a great place to go right now. There's a lot of political and just like safety issues in El Salvador. So, but like I said, Hawaii, you don't even need a passport and just fly over. So, and it's actually a discount cost of living compared to Silicon Valley. So we're actually saving money on rent. And lots of reasons for the move to Hawaii, but it's helped tremendously for my own mindset, my own outlook. That, but also like me really like doubling down, tripling down on my own pursuit of what I think is truth in medicine, of which like health optimization medicine is a big part of that. So I'm doing everything I can to buy myself time to just like fully build up my private practice, to like mini plug myself a little bit. Probably the best handle is carlosrivasmd.com. You can also find us on Facebook. Probably the best there is like facebook.com/Carlos A. Rivas MD. We're on Instagram at Carlos Rivas MD, etc. But whatever. That's me and my my co-owner, partner in crime, Elizabeth Artis. And we're doing everything we can to deliver real medicine to as many people who want it as possible. And that's really helped too, that I'm just like able to fully invest in myself time-wise and financially to deliver real medicine true to my Hippocratic oath, or at least my interpretation of my professional duty.
Yeah, so what is it about Hawaii that enabled you to sort of shift? Because I remember before you left and your sort of internal predicaments about being here in the system and wanting to do what you're doing now with health optimization medicine. But let's get into like Hawaii itself, the culture, the nature.
There's a lot there. The weather is just freaking warm. I think literally, I mean, we can get a little bit nerdy on this. I think I was literally like infrared deficient. I just like wasn't outside enough, like under the sun. Just like the clinic where I was working, super cold. All the lights were fluorescent. Constant AC. Like we would wear our white coats in our offices, like not because we wanted to look professional, but just because we couldn't stand the cold in the office. So like literally, I felt like my life force was being sucked out of me into the air conditioning. But like I've always felt, and there's a lot of science behind it, that the sun was life-giving, and like the warmth from the sun, which is primarily transmitted through infrared wavelengths, is life-giving. So just the warmth and the sunshine in Hawaii, like I said, like being called to the ocean, I can just like ride my bike down the hill. I live in Manoa Valley, which is beautiful. I'm happy to get into like how awesome Manoa Valley is. But I just ride down the mountain to the beach, and I'm in the ocean, and we can get a little bit nerdy on that, like the grounding, but also even just the connection with nature. It's been well studied that the more you expose yourself to natural environments, your inflammatory markers go down, your white blood cells calm down, your cytokines chill out, you're more resilient, mentally less at risk for mental health issues, and it's even been studied in as far as longevity. People who have more regular exposure to natural environments live longer because you need it. And we haven't figured out every detail of how nature is a healing force in our lives, but the science is clear. We need nature. We need sunshine. We need fresh air. We need to get our feet wet and dirty and our hands wet and dirty. We need to like eat a little bit of dirt and get into the microbiome stuff of that. But like really like getting in deep with nature is an important part of health. And if you're not doing that, there's going to be at least some negative health consequence to that. So that was a big part of it. Like I mentioned a little bit, the culture in Hawaii is very warm, strong Polynesian influence. And then just like the melting pot, especially like the kind of more Asian melting pot in Honolulu in particular, like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, other Polynesian islanders, we even talked about that, like, some people might even mistake me for being Portuguese because there's a strong Portuguese influence there. Actually, the ukulele was an import from Portuguese instrument.
Yeah,
that is very similar. All of that. So, like, the culture is very warm, very personal, very human, very, like, touch, very,
yeah.
Like, eye contact,
conversational, talking stories.
Yeah, like you don't even know somebody and they're calling you brother, they're calling you sister, they're calling you auntie, they're calling you uncle.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot to me and really made me feel good about being there. I mentioned Manoa Valley. Our little apartment is actually in Manoa. It's so cool, man. Like, Manoa Valley is the biggest valley on Oahu, so it means it's the biggest collector of clouds because the mountains are gigantic and it just, like, collects all the clouds. So a very frequent cloud cover, which means it's pretty cool there despite being very tropical, and it's constantly raining, which for me I love. Is very cleansing. Some people really get down about the rain, but for me it's just like I feel like nature is constantly cleansing us up there. The air is very fresh, and I just feel like all my troubles are getting washed down the mountain, and then the ocean, Moana, is collecting them and washing them away, and so, like, that's really cool. Because of that, I finally got my bike fixed, so now even my commute to work and back up home is like some good physical exercise. I was thinking about this interview and I was like, if Tony asks me like what do I think what some of my weaknesses are, I have to be very honest because some of my clients are going to watch this and they're going to call me out on it. Like physical training, as far as like, a holistic view of health, like physical training, I've been I really lost touch with after like high school. Through high school, I was really intense about competitive swimming. But since then, I've really like gotten out of shape. And so I've been trying to find ways to reintegrate that back into my lifestyle. Because there was a period when I was at Georgetown where I commuted on my bike.
Okay, so that kind of like helped you a lot. Yeah.
And so that really helped me. Yeah, we were talking about how did I get through medical school. Yeah. That was probably, I actually didn't even realize it, but I was probably kind of like stabilizing my depression a little bit just with my commute to campus.
Right, exercise-induced endorphins.
Exactly, all that.
You had to sacrifice a bunch of stuff when you went to medical school, and that includes exercising.
Yeah, but, luckily, just by necessity, we didn't have a car. So I had to find some way to get to campus, and so I got a bike. And like Georgetown was like up on this crazy hill. And so I'd bike up and down that every time I went to campus. But so like I'm trying to get that back into my life now. So I finally got my road bike fixed up. If you like follow me on Instagram, you'll see like some posts about how my bike wasn't working for a while.
Right.
But it's finally working. So now I can commute up the hill. That should help with my
You've been doing that. You've been surfing.
I'm trying to get back into surfing.
Yeah.
Like, to connect with my family heritage, but also like to the Polynesian culture that I'm in, and just like as a great way to get in touch with the ocean. Also, specifically surfing, I've always felt like my neck and my back were particularly weak just because we're always fucking on the computer 24/7. So surfing is a really great like back workout because you're prone on the board the whole time and like looking for ways.
So you can reverse the.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it's just all in my head. I need to get more of my physical trainer friends to help me balance my. You should put a plug in for Austin Einhorn and Aperos. I don't know if I pronounced that properly, but like
Aperos,
Aperos.
Yeah.
Like I need more help from guys like him. in getting my mechanics and my physical training up
Yeah.
to par, because like I'm very intense about the stuff that me and Shaker and Scott and Dr. Ted and all of our team over at Health Optimization Medicine focus on, which is really the biochemistry, the micronutrients, hormone balancing, that sort of thing. But really haven't gotten my physical training up to par, but I feel like Hawaii is helping me with that also, because I feel called to get out into nature and do physical things in nature. A lot of my friends and clients who are into physical training are like gym rats, and I just can't get into that. Like,
I don't blame you, man. Gym is
and like
rubber flooring.
Sometimes they're like in basements, and you can smell the mold.
Yep.
And like, sorry, I'm not trying to like freak everybody out, but mold is toxic, man, and that can really cause problems, especially if
mold,
you're
dust, skin cells from people's sweat, skin, mold, all that like volatile exhaust coming from the rubber, the treadmill spinning, that's creating all kinds of like toxic fumes probably, so it's like that combination. Plus you're under fluorescent light and there's no fresh air in there. It's all recycled AC.
I mean, I think people are still probably helping themselves rather than hurting themselves by going to the gym. So I'm not saying quit the gym if like that's the way that you really get into it. But for me, and I think a lot of people, kind of need to find an outdoor gym and connect with nature, or at least get outside while you're doing it. And just
why not like stack these things, like all the benefits of being in nature while you're moving your body, getting fresh air, sunlight, all these things that you and I talk about, are so important for the human organism to thrive. And if you can get all of them at once, instead of just like going to the gym, just getting your exercise in, why not do them all at the same time so you can get most bang for your buck?
Yeah, but then I always put out a disclaimer, because definitely I've had some clients who have called me out on this, and they're right. You have to have balance. And so sometimes you can get into this trap where you're trying to overstack. You know what I mean? And then you're like getting anxious just about like, do I have enough in my stack? Am I biohacking properly? Am I like, am I taking care of every detail? And it's like,
or you just don't go to the gym because you're like, I don't want to work out in that environment, and really you just need to move your body, and you may not be able to stack, but you do need to move your body, but you're like, I'm not going to go to the gym because I don't like gyms. And it's like, well, you're actually going to have more benefit going to the gym and working out on the net side.
Yeah, like if you have a friend who's like a gym rat, and like, for a lot of people it's the social piece really helps, then just like, attach yourself to that friend and go. Because like just getting started on getting into some physical training is just one of the most important things you could possibly do for your health. But if you really feel called out into nature, then like go out into nature. If you need the social piece, get a friend to go on walks with you. If it's hard finding a physical friend, call a friend. Like you and I frequently do that. We'll be on long phone calls, and we'll both be on long walks at the same time while we're doing that, or one of us is driving and one of us is walking. The internet can be your friend. So like I listen to a lot of music and go for long walks. I love doing that kind of thing.
Podcasts, audiobooks, those are all amazing things to do at the same time. What I love about you, Dr. Carlos, is that you have your hardcore science background, but you also recognize that there are some things that science cannot like measure and can't quantify it. So you're open to like whatever works. So like earlier you're talking about the energy fields of the heart per se, versus the brain, why like when you are in the presence of somebody that feels pretty like connected, calm, they're totally on purpose, you can see that they have like meaning in their life, and you're just in their vicinity, you feel impacted by them whether they say something or not. So what was it about your understanding of that where you do recognize that this is happening not just with people but also in nature, and like the connection to the universe, the greater?
Well, science was my gateway into opening my mind into these sorts of things. So like especially during my medical training, I had a lot of health struggles myself, you know, like we've been talking about, we kind of side mentioned, like mood issues and just like not feeling right. I got super depressed at points. You know, to be completely frank, got like to the point where I was suicidal, and that was probably really what helped me like find Pamela Wibble and like really dive into her content, because I was like, oh shit, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only like doctor in training who's having a hard time and like thinks really dark thoughts sometimes. And so I started looking into how to help myself, and of course I started with my own system, right? I was training in Western medicine, so I went to Western doctors. You know, I went to my primary care doc. They would refer me to a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I would go to talk to them, and maybe what, you know, the traditional docs were doing. By traditional, I mean like Western allopathic, MD, DO, working in a conventional insurance-based system. What they would do might help a little bit, but just like I could just feel inside me in like, you know, I guess a subjective way that like even whatever little help I got from pharmaceuticals or traditional talk therapy was just kind of like touching the surface, and there was a lot still wrong, and I ignored it for a lot of time. But sometimes when I was feeling a little bit better, we're like, well, let's get nerdy about stuff. So I'd start getting nerdy about nutrition. We had a little bit of a nutrition class in Georgetown that kind of opened the door for me a little bit. Obviously, we like had a decent biochem training, and food is biochemicals and interacts with your body biochemically. So I started looking into that a little bit. So experimented with different diets and stuff while I was in medical school. But then you always forget about it because like your training would get so intense that you didn't have time to like really stick to that. And then what you were being trained in didn't focus on that. So it was like had to be a side project, had to be a hobby to be healthy with diet.
Because you're
exercise.
basically trained to deal with illness and disease.
Yeah, and even you don't have the time to like care about yourself. You know, so first of all, yeah, your training is just like there's a pill for every ill, and if there isn't a pill for it, there's a surgery for it. And if there isn't a pill or a surgery for it, you're fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, obviously, there's a lot that like there isn't a drug for, and even if there is, it doesn't mean that the drug is the best way to go. So, you know, every once in a while, like I would start feeling worse, but had enough energy to like start investigating natural approaches to health. And then what really happened was, so like Shaker and I, we met like right at the beginning of medical school, bonded really well, went in slightly different paths for our first year of residency. He did his internship at a different institution while I was at Highland. But we stayed well connected, and I basically recruited him over to our residency program at Highland. So we went through internal medicine residency there. We were both like, this is bullshit, but this is the way that we can do service right now. So we both got like pretty conventional jobs afterwards. But right at the end of our internal medicine training, when we had more time, basically senioritis, you know, when you're a senior in high school and you fucking do whatever the fuck you want. Some of that was happening like our senior year of residency. And so we started exploring a little bit out of traditional internal medicine. So it was so right before we met you, Shaker and I went to a Obesity Medicine Association conference. So like shout out to all the homies over there, the Denver diet doctor. He's Dr. Gerber. He was like one of our mentors there in the Obesity Medicine Association. I'm bad with names, so I'm sorry that I'm hesitating here. But Dr. Eric Westman, who was one of the lead co-authors on basically the rewrite of the Atkins program, and is like building out a model for using ketogenic diets as like the cornerstone of treatment for reversing what we call metabolic syndrome, in particular like type 2 diabetes and obesity. He has a kind of like a franchise of clinics called Heal Clinics, I believe. And I'm forgetting some other important names because I'm just bad with names, so I apologize. But we had a few really influential mentors there who basically opened our eyes to like, oh, you can use diet to reverse disease. And me and Shaker were like, what? Like, that makes sense, but all you guys ever told us was it was drugs and surgery. But now you're saying, like, nutrition, and, like, what's this thing keto? What's keto? What's a ketogenic diet? Like, one dude mentioned that, and we were like, what's that?
Yeah,
We
never
started
heard that
Googling
before.
it,
Yeah.
and then we ended up on Facebook groups where we were interacting with people like Jamie. And Jamie was connected to a good friend of yours, Alexis,
yeah.
So shout out, girls. Like, you totally helped us out on that. We should, I don't know if you do show notes, but if you can, we should, like, give some links to the great stuff that Jamie's doing. And why not, like, put a link to the stuff that Alexis is doing. Me and Jamie got connected both locally and online. Like, we were both part of a meetup group run by Louis Son. He runs a really cool, like, the San Francisco ketogenic diet group that they're really using ketogenic diets to help heal their own diseases. So anyways, we got plugged into this socially and started looking into the science. And actually, the crazy thing was we were learning more on social media and other internet platforms than we were in our traditional resources for medical science. Like, we'd look at our textbooks and it was like, there's no mention of ketosis in the medical books besides diabetic ketoacidosis, which is like a life-threatening disease state. But what about what we're hearing about the potentially therapeutic benefits? And if you look deep at some, like, old medical, like, journal articles, you can find stuff about using ketogenic diets for the treatment of drug-resistant epilepsy in a pediatric population. So that was the first time where, like, real researchers and real medical doctors were using ketogenic diets in a therapeutic context and seeing, like, remarkable results, like,
for children with epilepsy.
And it was, like, more children because basically children were more sensitive to the side effects of the drugs. For adults, it's like, we can find some way to get you on one of these pills and reduce it. But some kids, like, just, like, were zombies, or literally put into comas if they were on hardcore anti-epileptic drugs. They couldn't tolerate them, or other side effects like rashes and things like that. They couldn't tolerate the side effects of the drugs, but they had to find some way to control seizures in pediatric epilepsy patients. And
so they put them on a high-fat diet.
I don't know the whole history of it, but basically they used high-fat diets, MCT oils, because those were really easily absorbed and digested. And gave ketones as energy to the brain, and that was helping stabilize the electrical patterns in the brain and preventing, and in many cases completely eliminating, the need for any other intervention to control epilepsy. So there's this group called the Charlie Foundation that's based in Canada. They often have their conference in Banff, Canada. So, like, shout out to them. They really helped open our eyes into the therapeutic potential of ketogenic diets, not just for epilepsy, but for all sorts of conditions. And so, we found, like, through social media and other ways of connecting online, like, lecturers and scientists who are posting their talks on YouTube. So YouTube and Facebook became our classroom. And we had classmates all over. There's people just dying for this information and are really smart, and they might not have a traditional background. They didn't go to medical school or whatever, but, like, have gone deep into the research of it. And so we started making a lot of friends there. Jamie, and then you. We started following Jason Prahl's podcast, and he was just bringing in, like, ridiculously, like, genius level guys talking about stuff, guys and gals, sorry, like, genius level stuff.
Yeah, like Easy Water, the fourth phase of water with
Structured
Dr.
water.
Pollock, right?
Or Dr. Jack Cruz talking about the importance of
light,
natural sunshine, avoiding blue light and like other artificial light spectrums.
How that affects our hormonal
and then even
profile.
getting deep onto like the negative health impacts of electromagnetic fields, and the importance of like getting back in touch with natural electromagnetic fields, like grounding through the earth and like the earth's magnetic field, and finding ways to create some distance or like make a little bit less like negative impact from the EMFs that we're exposed to through
technology,
tech. And then actually, like other big mentors there, like Dr. Beck had an episode there. I think they were talking about methylation and MTHFR. Like, shout out to the people in that world. I have an MTHFR defect. I'm C677T homozygous, which is like considered like one of the really bad mutations there.
So what does
that
that
mean? It's not the end of the world, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. The details like get complicated, but it's not the end of the world. Like, there's lots of stuff going on in your health besides like your single nucleotide polymorphisms, your SNPs.
So what is that,
information,
though?
but they're not the most functional information. Basically, I'd have to explain all of health optimization medicine to say like how we deal with everyone's unique biochemistry.
Right.
But
which everybody is unique.
Everybody's unique, and even your unique genetics are not the full story.
Yeah.
They're only kind of they're just your cell's toolbox, and even then we're only looking at a couple of the tools that we've been able to sort out. There's millions or billions that we haven't sorted out yet. We were talking about this at the park the other day.
Yeah, exactly.
There's whole loops of DNA, like millions, billions of nucleotide bases that we just have not like figured out exactly what they do. We're finding out that they're probably more structural and like photo communication based.
Right. And in the past, they've been coined junk DNA.
Yeah, you would call them junk DNA, but really they're probably more part of the epigenetics and other like forms of genetic communication and cellular communication that we haven't completely sorted out yet, and definitely isn't in the medical textbooks.
So there's a lot that we still don't know, even with the technology that we have today.
Yeah, so like, even things like 23andMe, or like even if you got your full genomic profile, that's definitely information, but we haven't unraveled what it means. And even if we did, it's just one layer on top of like we don't know how many layers that influence
the tip of the
health.
iceberg is anything.
Yeah. But where was I going with that? We were talking about MTHFR.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like so many different things that are part of like the human being. And my original.
Oh yeah, no, Dr. Beck.
Yeah.
His talk was about methylation. That's where we got on that track, and we were talking about that because of Jason Pearl's podcast.
Yeah.
So like Dr. Beck really helped me learn a lot about not just methylation, but like about functional medicine in general and the like advances that have happened there, and just like a more rigorous yet like natural, balanced approach to health. So his platform is called the Balance Protocol, and like anybody who's working with Dr. Beck, like excellent, like thumbs up. They're doing great work over there, and it's very much in alignment with what we're doing over at Health Optimization Medicine, just a different style, a different crew. But like Dr. Beck really helped me open my eyes to a lot of these things.
Because there are all these other variables that are helping us become optimized or healthy, and not like living in a state of illness or disease.
And also like specifically the term balance, that we shouldn't be afraid of like the dark side of things. Like sometimes things like pain or discomfort are signals that something is wrong that needs to be fixed. So we should have gratitude for that feedback, because it's giving us a chance to fix things. And even a lot of the like signals that we traditionally would have used to interpret our own health status, like we ignore, especially like we're talking about with the digital age, where like such an influx of notifications and content that like we don't even listen to our bodies the way that we used to, for the positive or the negative. But anyways, like Dr. Beck really opened the door to a lot of this stuff for us, and so he deserves a lot of credit in my background in particular. And then like we also were exposed to Dr. Ted Achacoso for the first time on Jason Pearl's podcast. He had a little series on gut health on his podcast, and we were just blown away by this guy. I was like, we've never heard about this dude, but he frickin' knows what's going on. So Shaker took a leap of faith big leap of faith and like flew out from LA to, I think Dr. Ted was giving a talk at the microbiota conference in Berlin or something.
Yeah, in
like,
Germany.
Yeah. And he was just like, fuck it, I'm going.
Yeah.
And like he cold called, emailed him, and was like, I'm coming to find you, bro. And Dr. Ted was like, come find me, bro. And they hung out and they bonded, and then Shaker brought Ted back to us, you know?
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
we had that meetup in LA, where we all got to meet up, and, you know, Jason was there, Dr. Ted was there, you, me, and Shaker and Scott, and that was really the beginnings of the organization of health optimization medicine in the United States. Dr. Ted had already mentored and trained a number of physicians, particularly in Manila. So a lot of them are under the banner of BioBalance. So if you want to find out more about them, they're at biobalanceinstitute.com, I think. Just Google it. You're more likely to find it. You just type in BioBalance Institute. They're based in Manila in the Philippines. And so when we saw it, I was like, okay, it's not just a smart guy who's like charismatic and sounds like he knows what's going on. He's already developed a training program that works for him and his own clients. But also, like, you know, there's a team of docs already practicing, you know, had a training like me. They went to medical school, they did residency, maybe they got some functional medicine training after that, maybe not, but they learned health optimization medicine as like designed and refined by Dr. Ted Achacoso, and they're helping themselves and they're helping other people. And I was like, oh shit, this is the real deal. But Dr. Ted had never really fully mentored. He had done some teaching in the United States, but hadn't really like fully mentored American physicians the way that he had in Manila. And so we were like, well, we want to learn this kind of medicine, and not just for us and not just for our patients, but we want to help save the world. You know, like conventional medicine is doing a lot of good, but it's not the end-all and be-all. There's still a lot of suffering that conventional medicine hasn't answered, and there's even still a lot of medicine, like health issues, that even integrative or complementary health approaches hasn't fully addressed either. But we're going to get a lot closer if we get all these pieces together, and we really need to build that up. So we're all working together to build this organization called Health Optimization Medicine in Practice. Easiest way to find us is healthoptimizationmedicine.org. Dr. Ted's our leader and mentor. Dr. Scott Scher is kind of the chief organizer. Dr. Shaker, obviously, is the chief connector. He's the one getting us all together and making sure the who's who and the what's what are all like on the same page. And Jason's still doing a lot for us. He's kind of our chief of marketing.
He's got a documentary out.
Yeah, he's got an awesome new docu-series out, the Human Longevity Project. Dr. Ted is featured there, but leaders around the globe in health and medicine are featured there. It's a really great series, highly recommended to anybody, well worth it. But he's doing a lot in media with us because he's obviously an expert there, in addition to being an expert in the practice of health optimization.
Yeah, so the word is spreading. And so you guys went down this rabbit hole. You went down this rabbit hole, found all these amazing practitioners around the world that are classically medically trained, but also looked outside of the box. So back to the earlier question was like, you know, being open to the fact that we are electrical biochemical beings, that we emit a signal, and then having the ability to listen to the feedback loop within ourselves, interacting with our environment, interacting with other human beings, other sentient beings, interacting with all of it, whether it's internal, external. So how is it that you were able to say, hey, you know, science is limited, there's something more going on? What was your own personal experience with that there's more to life than what can be measured?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying like own personal experience, because I do have to put out that disclaimer that Dr. Ted is very rigorous about like addressing what's measurable. So health optimization is very precise. We go on a like as rigorous as possible foundation of like measurable scientific biology. So if it's not directly measurable, quantifiable, and like isn't like established that we can positively influence somebody's health by intervening specifically on that metric, then it could still be a health practice, but isn't like officially part of health optimization medicine yet, until we can find a way to reliably measure and reliably intervene and see the post effects of those interventions. But that doesn't mean there isn't lots of health stuff that is not as objectively measurable yet. So for me personally, as I was like going down the rabbit holes of ketogenic nutrition and health benefits there, and then nutrition in general, and then we talked about light and sunshine, I just started realizing, okay, there's a lot going on health-wise besides what I learned in medical school. Some of it's measurable and some of it's not, and maybe for just historical reasons or political reasons or whatever, some of these things are kind of in the house of traditional medicine, and there's some things that aren't. So what are some of the other kind of just like big resources for health practices besides what's conventionally taught and available? It's like, well, the ancient traditions have been like working on healing people for thousands, maybe millions of years, right? Even like non-human animals will like chew on medicinal plants, and they don't seem to be doing it randomly. Like, so there's even like, anyways. So when I was starting to like get some overlap into those areas, like Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Tibetan medicine,
shamanic
medicine, like American herbal medical traditions, traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, learning a little bit about the meridians, about the chakras, etc. I'm no expert in any of these things, by the way, but just was able to start, even just like through the science, like reading journal articles and saying like, oh, there's a reduction in cytokines when you like stand out in the sun. When I was taught in medical school, the sun was just bad for you because it was just increasing your risk of skin cancer, and all you need to do is take a vitamin D supplement if you're worried about your vitamin D levels. And it's like, no, even if you just look at the basic science, you're just looking at what researchers are doing and reporting, there's lots of health benefits for sun exposure besides just vitamin D production. You can't replace sun with a pill. And so I just started seeing that there were other things like that where like the science wasn't as advanced as it was in pharmaceuticals for these other health practices, but it was at least suggestive that there's a lot of benefit from things that we kind of like common sense or like traditional wisdom consider healthy or medicinal, like sunshine, like herbal remedies, So I started looking more into those things. You're talking about like energies and magnetic fields and whatnot. So at some point, started looking more into meditation, neurofeedback, biofeedback, that sort of stuff, which is like really awesome stuff that we do on the Magic Flow Bus. Go to a Magic Flow Bus, do some neurofeedback, biofeedback. It's awesome stuff. But so one of
appreciate the plug.
Yeah, no, Magic Flow Bus like changed my life. It's super awesome. Like I said it on Facebook, and I'll say it again. Every Magic Flow Bus event is a potentially life-changing event. So go change your life for the better.
And why do you say that, just to interject on that?
Well, just like so many things, right? Like you get the social piece, like you're literally in a bus or like some other small space with people, so you're really bonding. Everybody's there because they're motivated to improve their health, to elevate themselves. So like it's a very positive, very like motivational, tribal in the positive sense of that term, atmosphere. So I love that. And then you get exposed to a lot of really awesome health optimization modalities that most people might be hesitant to try because they just like haven't had the guidance or support or had the chance to ask the questions that they needed to have answered before feeling comfortable doing something. So for example, it's not easy to get into an ice bath, man. And like a lot of people might have legitimate worries that like, oh, like I'm going to have a panic attack, like my heart's going to race like crazy, it's just too cold. What about hypothermia? Isn't it going to be a shock to my system, et cetera, et cetera? And those are all like really legit, honest, like emotional questions to ask.
Yeah.
And so you need somebody like Chuck McGee the third to be like, I got you. This is the answer to all of those questions. This is how we're going to manage all of those issues. I've walked 100, 1,000 people through this. I don't know how many clients you had, Chuck, but a lot, and I trust you. And he walked me through it, and even though I had been through some Wim Hof training before, I had been out of the loop for a while, I was really nervous, like, because I knew that the ice bath was on the schedule. I was like, damn, I don't know if I can do it. And that's going to be embarrassing because I've gone to some Wim Hof instructor training. Like, I'm a doctor. I'm trying to practice health optimization medicine. I don't know if I can get an ice bath, but, like, Chuck just held our hands and walked us through it. And it was so easy, like, easy on a level that I just, like, couldn't imagine, and then, like, felt so good after. And then we had the sauna right there. So, like you're saying, you're able to stack some of these health practices together, and like combining that with the community that you're building, and then you're doing a really good job of connecting the like in-person connections, and then like also planting the seeds of those digital connections so that people can stay in the loop with each other and stay communicating and continue to build those relationships.
Yeah,
it's just fucking awesome.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, I mean, the main thing too that was created because there's so many people that are having conferences and they're just lecturing all day long, and you're sitting in a dark room, which is antithesis to like health, and like you're getting information, but you're on. It's like being online, just surfing the web for more information. And I wanted people to actually get that direct experience with all the things that are talked about during these amazing conferences and lectures.
Yeah.
And then on the back end, people can learn, what was that experience? How did that work? How now the theory becomes alive to them because they actually had that real experience with what they're talking about in these dark rooms, you know?
Yeah, and it's really important too because Shaker and I noticed that really early on that him and I were learning a lot about first ketogenic diets, but then lots of other like biohacks, and like shout out to Dave Asprey and Bulletproof podcast, and like Tim Ferriss and all the biohacking stuff that he puts out there, Joe Rogan, all the biohacking health optimization stuff that he puts out there, and kind of the circles of people around each of those guys. Like those communities have really helped a lot. But so like him and I, we knew that we were like willing biohackers, like we would fuck with our diet, we would fast for 3 or 4 days, like we'd go out naked in the sun in the backyard for days, and everyone like thinks we're crazy people, but we were experimenting with our health, right? And like even willing to put a little bit like even willing to make some mistakes there, like so if I got a sunburn, it's like, okay, well that's not optimal, but part of me figuring out how to do this so that I can learn how to communicate this to other people. But what we found out pretty quickly is that a lot of people, they've just been so sheltered, or maybe it's just a difference in personality or whatever, that they're just not as willing to experiment if they don't have the kind of in-person experienced coach or guide like what you're able to get at a Magic Flow Bus event. Or even if you don't need a guide, but you just need a partner in crime, like you just need somebody else to try this with you to make it, like you have a buddy, if you need to bail out, like you have somebody there who's going to like help you bail out, whatever it is, just like that kind of social reassurance. But also like you bring really highly educated, trained, and experienced people to the group. I know, like, even with the title, people might think, like, it's just, like, fluffy, hippy-dippy, woo-woo. No, man, like, Tony's bringing top-notch people to, like, walk you through some very advanced health practices. Like Dr. Scott Scher, world-renowned integrative health hyperbaric oxygen therapy practitioner, like basically defining integrative hyperbaric oxygen in the United States. Integrative hyperbaric oxygen therapy. There's lots of docs using hyperbaric oxygen that came before him, but very few that are using it in such a integrative, non-traditional way to advance healing. Or Dr. Dan Engel, who's obviously like top-notch in using like traditional plant medicines, specifically in the realms of like what we would call like psychiatric health or
mental health,
that sort of thing. But I mean, he takes it way beyond. He's really helping optimize people's health in that way. You brought Dr. Harry, who's like world renowned in treating chronic pain and also like common mental health issues like depression and anxiety, using very common plant-based remedies like cannabis, etc. And he's also on the cutting edge of a bunch of other things. So like Tony's not messing around at Magic Flow Bus. Like it really is magical, but very rigorous and scientific and safe. And yeah, so I can never stop praising like the work you're doing in Magic Flow Bus specifically, because Shaker and I noticed like a lot of people just can't do it without some like pretty hands-on social support. In the practice that we're doing, health optimization medicine, because it's a pretty niche thing that we're doing, and since we don't take insurance for what we're doing, it's cash only. And most of the cash that people end up spending isn't even necessarily for like our professional fees, but like for the labs that we need to do or the supplements that they might need to take and whatnot. It's expensive. So it creates like, you know, unfortunately a narrow market. The way that we are, we're not happy about that, right? Because like I said at the beginning of this, like I want to take care of my people, and I know a lot of my people can't afford the type of like health promotion that we're doing. So the way that we're seeing it as like, well, these are our early adopters. Early adopters always kind of have to like pay a tax on that experiment, but they're really investing not only in themselves but in the betterment of this kind of practice for the whole world. And so as we build this up in our own practices, as we build up the structure to teach other doctors to practice the same kind of medicine or to integrate this type of medicine into their practices, and spread this across the globe systematically, then our systems will get more efficient. So we'll be able to lower prices that way because we'll just be able to take care of more people with less overhead. And there'll just be more competition. There'll be more doctors doing the same thing, more doctors and other practitioners doing the same thing. So just like because of the competition in that market, that'll bring prices down too. I say that in a positive way. Like I want the healthcare market to put me out of business because there's other people doing it better and cheaper than me. Because that means more people are getting served and more people have access to what is, I think, everybody's natural right to have like a vibrant, strong, happy, wonderful, long life. The more access to that, the cheaper access to that, the better. Right now, just because of the way the health market is, it's a pretty high price point. So people who are willing to experiment and invest in that, those are our primary clientele right now. And so those people, they're already willing to put down a decent amount of money to do this. So they're ready to play. They're ready to experiment. But a lot of people who are like kind of would like to biohack, they get the idea, but are just timid or cautious for whatever reason, they need an environment like the Magic Flow Bus to help them get through. I try over a digital platform to do a lot of that motivation and education. And often just by tweaking some easy things like, okay, let's just like clean up your diet a little bit. Let's like look at your biochemistry. Okay, it's obvious that you need these supplements. Get you to start feeling a little bit better. You had kind of some of this experience with
Dr. Mark Gordon. Yeah,
Dr. Gordon's a great leader in this space. So once you start feeling better, doing these kind of easy things, like, I'll just put a pill in my head every day. Oh, I'm feeling a little better.
Man, imagine if the magic pill wasn't pharmaceutical based, so to speak, but more nutraceutical based, and then got you to a place where you do feel better, and then from there you're like, what else can I do? Because I feel amazing when I just replenish my deficiencies.
Yeah, so like I know that helps. Like, if I start like kind of building up somebody's biochemical base, that they'll just have a little bit more energy, which means they're a little bit more optimistic about their life, which means they're willing to take a little bit more of like low-level risks, you know, because like doing an ice bath is scary, but if you're doing it with Chuck, believe me, you'll only feel better at the end. So things like that, but also we network with guys and organizations like you, so that I can say like, oh, you're in Los Gatos, well, like hook up with my friend Austin so that he can hands-on help you out with a lot of stuff. Or like, oh, you're in San Francisco, Dr. Harry's based in San Francisco, call up his clinic. Or you know, I have clients as far-flung as like Sydney or Melbourne, Australia. So like I'm trying to get connected with the functional medicine and like integrative holistic health communities out there so I can make proper referrals. Some of my clients themselves, like as they learn health optimization medicine, become part of the network too. It's like, okay, like you're a physical trainer, can I send people to you? Like they might be in San Francisco, they might be in New York, they might be in London, but they need someone like you to teach them how to move their bodies and like get motivated to do so. Can I send them to you? Sometimes that's a struggle because we have to like, people are used to doing things in person, so then we have to get them on a like digital platform or vice versa. It's like, oh, I usually do digital things and you're going to send me a client who's local. But we keep trying to do that, like expanding the network. And it's really important to have people who can help you do these sorts of things in person, because sometimes you just can't fully make that connection over a digital platform as much as we try. You know, I try to make it as real as possible. You know, watch this YouTube video. Let's do our interaction over Skype. We were talking about this a little bit before. Because so many of my clients are, you know, over a digital platform, I've become like kind of hyper aware, like at the nonverbal cues that I can pick up, besides, you know, just over a digital
mainly
platform.
Because you've gotten yourself better as a full, you know, as a human being, to the point where now your brain's working, your everything in your system's working better. That what you didn't see before when you were in a down state, you're probably missing these signals, right? And that's what we were saying, like when we give our best to the world by taking care of ourselves, then we start to notice things, and these nonverbal cues, you can pick them up even in a text now, like not just like on a digital screen with Skype or Zoom or some kind of video call, but just from a text or the intonation of somebody's voice on the phone.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I just like put my antennas up and like you start feeling those things out. Yes, definitely, because I'm feeling better. I think some of like, you know, those human sensors are turning back on.
Yeah, your ability to listen has been enhanced like a lot. And that's what's going on with a lot of people out there, right? They're just missing the signals from each other, especially with social media and smartphones. We're missing these cues. It's almost becoming, you know, I'm sorry to use the word, but it's becoming more and more retarded, you know, and in the sense that we have
dumbed down. Yeah, sure.
Dumbed down or nullified, or you know, it's just, but it's there. It's always been there, and we just have to turn it back on by having more of these kind of interactions, by taking better care of ourselves, and then we can be our best in the world. I mean, that's always been, I guess that's my new purpose in life, is like, how can I give my best to the world? And first by giving to myself, so that I'm like optimized. And when I'm optimized, I could totally give more to the world. I can listen better. And I certainly noticed that, you know, with you in the past few months, you know, seeing your change by taking the leap of faith and going to Hawaii.
Thanks,
and putting yourself in that environment that is actually really healing. It's one of the reasons why I lived there for many years, multiple times, you know. So, but
the aloha, the mana, the aina,
all
it
of
does
that,
a lot
right?
to feed your spirit. And your soul.
Totally recommend like people going there, you know, if not to live, but actually to visit, to get that imprint on their system, so that they can carry that aloha, aina, mana back to wherever they are in the world, and people can feel, you know, the hakuna matata, you know, right? just that like aloha spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Carlos, we flew by this. Any last final thoughts or words you want to share with people after our little garbage man passes by?
I would say just make sure you stay in the loop conversationally. So subscribe to Tony's YouTube channel, subscribe to his podcast.
You're the best like plugger ever.
No, it's important, really, because
I appreciate
that's
it,
how
man.
you keep the pulse on what's going on.
Yeah.
So subscribe to those. Interact in the comments, because you'll meet other like people who are either know what's going on or they're companions in this journey. So interact, engage online. Go to one of the Magic Flow Bus events if you possibly can. It's worth it to fly out here and do a Magic Flow Bus. I'm really sad that I'm going to miss your next Magic Flow Bus coming up here in July.
But yeah, to your point though, like a lot of the people that I've met in my life in networking all came from the internet and interacting on comments, posting or reposting, or again making comments on whoever's post that's been put out.
Yeah, I mean
then,
that's what,
then a direct message, right?
Yeah, no, I mean that's what, like you were saying, that's what really motivated me and Shaker to set up the meeting to meet you. That like Jamie shared one of your Facebook posts about your experience experimenting with the Wim Hof method, and we were like, oh shit, this dude Tony is legit. We need to meet this dude. But yeah, so like interact with Tony and the Magic Flow Bus in person if possible, at a minimum online. Go to healthoptimizationmedicine.org and fill out the contact page so that you can get on the email list and stay in the loop there. Especially if you're a doctor or other health practitioner, including health coaches or just like a biohacker who really wants to be in the loop with health optimization medicine, which in my humble opinion, is like the most advanced, most rigorous, most scientifically driven, most organized form of biohacking. So if you want to do biohacking right, stay in the loop with health optimization medicine. Actually, a really good way to do that is go on YouTube and just search Dr. Ted Achacoso, and he has a bunch of talks and interviews that he's done, and so you can really get a sense for what health optimization medicine is.
So it's what?
Yeah, so DR space TED for Ted, and then Achacoso, ACHACOSO. Just type that into the YouTube search box, and you'll find a ton of awesome stuff. My favorites of his are, he did a podcast episode with the HVMN guys. I think they pronounce it human, but it's HVMN. That episode is really cool to get a sense for what health optimization medicine is and like how it's similar but different from biohacking. And I also really like his relatively recent episode on the Bulletproof podcast. You really get a better sense for Dr. Ted's personality and his background in that episode. They don't talk a lot about health optimization medicine. The focus is slightly different because him and Dave really get to nerd out on some other stuff that they both uniquely have a very deep background in. So those are my two favorite episodes to find out more about Dr. Ted Achacoso and what he's doing in health optimization medicine in general. If you want to connect with me and my little sub team specifically, CarlosRivasMD.com, but we're probably more active on Instagram right now. So that's Instagram.com/CarlosRivasMD. And then I work with, like I said, my partner Elizabeth Artist, so you'll find links to her there also. And so just stay in the loop, stay in the conversation, because things are constantly evolving, constantly developing. We're very soon going to be rolling out our beta curriculum to get other doctors trained in health optimization, other doctors and other practitioners too. We train anybody and everybody who's interested in this sort of stuff. Right now the focus is other prescribing and non-prescribing physicians, so MDs, DOs, naturopaths, chiropractors, people with some degree of health certification, because we want to incorporate this into the conventional medical mindset as soon as possible. But we plan on having educational content for anybody and everybody who's interested, so stay in the loop there.
I think that should
Those
be
are the
good,
main
man.
things.
Yeah,
Those are the main
yeah.
things.
I think the garbage man's telling us to finish up here. So thank you so much, Dr. Carlos Rivas, for coming on to Hangry and Horny. And love the t-shirt you're wearing, Hakuna Matata. And what does that mean again?
It means no worries. But, okay, I won't get into it too much. My son just loves The Lion King. Him and I really bonded with that movie. Hakuna Matata. There's a lot more. Also, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit nerdy about The Lion King because, you know, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson?
Yeah.
He references The Lion King as, like, a good story for referencing some important mythological, archetypal truths. So
which we could get into.
It's kind of like a Jordan Peterson joke if anybody is into Jordan Peterson stuff.
Oh yeah, listening. His stuff's amazing, and we could definitely get into, like, you know, becoming a more integrative, like, awesome human being through learning all the ancient mythic stories and, like, their analogies and symbolism. So thank you, man. I love you, pleasure. And I can't wait to have you on the show again.
Thanks, anytime.
Oh, yeah.
Love you, Tony.
Love you.